Hello and welcome to the Cambrian Virtual Show, the show that we've been running from the 22nd to the 29th of May, and it's lovely to have you all here. This is going to be our last pre-recorded video, so it's the last pre-recorded video that we're going to be doing for you. It's lovely to see everyone that is in live as well, so let us know that you're watching live with your comments in the description. It's always nice to see that you're there watching with us. You can see all of the other pre-recorded videos on our website, so you can go to cambrianphoto.co.uk, click on the Photo and Optics show, and watch all the other pre-recorded videos that we've got going on there as well. We are happy to announce that all the videos that we've done as well have been for free. If you'd like to support us by donating on our website as well, you can do that. And all the profits will go to chosen charities and local food banks as well. Anything else I need to say in that intro? Yes, so later on this evening, we're going to have our live only event, which is going to be Clive booth. That's going to be starting at 7 p.m. So very much looking forward to seeing that. So on to today's live video. Super excited. I've personally been a Nikon user for a very long time, so very excited to hear what Rob has to say from Nikon. So let's give a big warm welcome to Rob from Nikon. Hi Rob, how's it going? You okay?
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, thank you very much for having me here today. It's a good privilege to be able to talk on these live shows.
Yeah, no, yeah, thanks for joining us, and not only joining us, but joining us with sort of a brilliant presentation that you're going to be doing for us as well. So very much look forward to doing that. And yeah, so you sort of head up like the NPS events and things like that, don't you?
That's right, yeah. I've been working for Nikon for 15 years. Just to tell you the story, I came from camera retail myself. Yeah. And Nikon was always a brand that I really admired. I liked their cameras. I had Nikon cameras for time. And I actually wrote to Nikon to see if they had any jobs going. So I was fortunate enough to get a job with Nikon. Then after a year or so, I moved into Nikon Professional Services, where we look after professional photographers, get to go to a lot of events where there are a lot of photographers working and so on. And now I head up the team there. So very sort of pleased that things have worked out that way for me. And it's great that you're a Nikon fan as well.
Certainly am. Oh, that's brilliant. I will say as well that we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end of Rob's presentation as well. So if you have any Nikon related questions that you'd like to ask Rob, just drop them in the comments and we can get to them at the end of here. We may pick some up during the talk as well if it's sort of relative to what we're talking about, but generally we sort of leave the Q&As to the end. So please drop your questions in below, or any other sort of Nikon stories that you want to share with us. We love to see your comments coming through, love to see that you're here live with us. So drop them in the comments and we can get to them. Rob, wonderful to have you. You're going to talk a little bit about the D6, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm going to show you this fantastic new Nikon flagship camera and why it is absolutely the best camera out there for the top end professionals. But it is just the ultimate DSLR, and hopefully I can explain that to everyone.
That's brilliant. Well, I'll let you carry on with your presentation, Rob. And okay. Enjoy, everyone.
Thanks very much, Paul. Right, so yeah, as I said, I'm going to show you this phenomenal camera. But before I do so, I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about the Nikon brand. As I said, I do feel very passionate about the Nikon brand, and we have a lot of facets of what makes Nikon so great that we don't actually talk about a huge amount. And I feel that we should shout out about what makes a Nikon camera so good, what makes the brand so good. I know not all of you are going to be in the market for a D6, of course, but this is the ultimate. But we do carry that strong brand heritage through to all of our cameras, be it an entry-level camera or the Z series or any of our DSLRs. So what is great about Nikon? Well, first of all, very high production quality. When you buy a Nikon, you know it's going to work fantastically out of the box. Sometimes you buy products, you take it home, you open it up, and it doesn't work for whatever reason, and it's just a real pain. That very rarely happens with Nikon. We really do take pride in the production of our products. One of the most important things when you're choosing a camera or a piece of imaging equipment is the actual quality of the image that it produces. Now, Nikon cameras are amongst the best in terms of their image sensors. If you look at a company called DxOMark, for instance, who independently review camera sensors, Nikon are consistently up there with in the top 10 with the performance out of the sensors. The D850, which many of you may know well, become a legendary camera over the last few years, actually scored the highest score it was possible to achieve by DxOMark in terms of how good the sensor was. It scored 100%. Another thing that's great about Nikon products, and those of you that have already invested in Nikon will absolutely know, is the durability. Now, Nikon have been in business for over 100 years. We celebrated our 100-year anniversary 2 years ago. But we've been making SLRs, not DSLRs, SLRs for over 60 years when the Nikon F came out. Now, some of you may know this story, but there was there's a legendary war photographer called Don McCullin, famed for using his Nikons through various kind of wars throughout sort of modern history. Now, his Nikon F in 1968 took a bullet in Korea, and it actually saved his life. So you can say that our cameras are quite literally bulletproof, and we've carried that heritage over to our latest cameras, and including the likes of the D6, that real ruggedness that has become synonymous with our brand. Also, the operability of our cameras, I would say, is second to none. Nikon really do listen to photographers, and we take feedback from photographers, and we make sure that our cameras are really easy to use. The Nikon system, the menu system, I would say, is the best there is out there, the most idiot-proof, if you like, the easiest to use. And in terms of our button configuration, we really think about where photographers want the buttons to be, and customization as well, making the cameras easily customizable. Again, this applies to whether you're looking at a top-end camera like the D6 or something very, very low in the range. Also, something that Nikon should be very proud about is our system compatibility. As I said, we made our first SLR in 1959, the Nikon F. Now, even the latest generation of Nikon DSLRs are still compatible with lenses from 1959. So if you've invested into the Nikon system, you don't have to worry about upgrading all of your products when we bring out a new system. Even the Nikon Z range, we've got the fantastic Nikon Z6 and Z7, and more recently the awesome little great value for money Z50. They're all compatible via the FTZ adapter with even older Nikon lenses. So you've got a great Nikon compatibility system. You can run, a DSLR in your kit bag side by side with a Nikon Z, and you can interchange the lenses absolutely no problem. Another thing that is great about Nikon products is the precision and development that goes into the products. If you invest in a big Nikon lens, like say the 400mm f2.8, you're investing into something that was really made with a lot of care. Some of the glass elements in the Nikon 400mm 2.8, for instance, are hand ground in Japan, but by people. It takes 3 days to make just one of the elements to give you that absolutely superb optical quality that you would expect from a Nikon. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into what's good about our brand and why I feel so passionate about our brand and our products. So let's look at the D6 then. Well, before I talk about the D6, I'm going to talk briefly a little bit about the D5. The D5 to me was the ultimate. It was the ultimate imaging tool. As Paul and I spoke about at the beginning, I work a lot with professionals and events, big events such as I've worked at Olympic events and also World Cup and places like that, where you see a gathering of the world's best sports photographers who need the camera to be the best there is out there, to stay at the cutting edge and to stay on top of their game. Well, I mean, the D5, we've had phenomenal feedback on that. The D5 has been out for 5 years, and I thought you couldn't get any better than that. but we've proved that you can with the D6. It goes leagues above in terms of what it can do. One of the most notable upgrades over the D5 that the D6 has is a whole new focusing system. So if you can see on the screen there, you can see this is the array of focus points. It's actually got 105 focus points. Now, people have asked, well, the D6 had 153 focus points. How can the D5, the D5 had 153. How can the D6 be better? Well, the D6 has got a whole new focus sensor. It's called the Multicam 37K AF module. Now that is the part, if you can see my cursor there, that actually measures the focus to get the focus accuracy that you need. It's actually got 37,000 individual sensors on it. And if we look to the right of the screen, if you look at the array of the focus points on the D6, they're very different from that of the D5. Basically, they're more dense, so you've got a much higher concentration of focus points than you had on the D5. And more importantly than that, every single one of them is a crosshair focus sensor. Now, crosshair means that it takes focus from a point of contrast on a horizontal plane and also on a vertical plane, which means it's a lot more accurate than a focus point that isn't a crosshair. On the D5, it was only the outer ones and the center array that were crosshairs, but they all are on the D6, making it so much more accurate in terms of attaining your focus, but also your focus tracking as well. Another new thing that the D6 has got is a new dedicated ASIC, which is application-specific integrated circuit board. That is a chip that is designed purely to control the focusing, the measurement of the focus and the accuracy of the focus of the camera, which means that the camera doesn't slow down in terms of its processing as it's achieving focus. Now, no other brand with DSLRs can say that. Nikon are the only one that have a chip that is dedicated just to the focus. We've also put in focus eye priority through the viewfinder as well, which is the first for any DSLR. Any of you out there that are using the Nikon Z or Z50, Z6 or Z7 will know, especially with the latest firmware upgrade, just how good our IAF is. Well, that technology is carried through to the Nikon D6. Now, the D6 has been on the market for just over a week now, and I'm already getting in a lot of really positive feedback from photographers that have been using it and saying how good that eye focus is. It really does nail focus on the subject every single time. Now, let me just come back to it. I don't want to jump to this too soon. There's a very, very technical photographer we know called Tony O'Brien, who we've been working with over the last couple of weeks. Now, Tony is probably the most knowledgeable about focus systems and the most technically minded when it comes to how focus systems operate of all the photographers I know. Now, we gave him a D6 nice and early to test because I knew that he would be able to pick up on any of the focus improvements or criticize if there was something wrong, because as I said, we like to hear feedback from photographers. But Tony said he's blown away with how good the focus is in the D6, even compared to the D5, which he was using previously. Now, this is a sequence of 20 images of a gull coming into land. Now, what I haven't said is that the D6 will actually shoot at 14 frames a second. So this is a sequence slowed down by about 5 times, and you can see just how accurate the focus is on the camera. As we see this sequence, it's nailed every single one, and in auto area AF, that is very, very impressive. When you also consider as well that gull is backlit. Now, backlit situations were traditionally quite difficult for autofocus systems to cope with, but on the D6, it's just nailed every single shot. So if I choose a specific image there where the gull's just landed, you can see the water droplets there that the focus has just taken. It just hasn't missed a beat. And if we zoom into that picture a little bit more, you see it full screen there, you'll see just how sharp it is closer up. You can also see, depending on how big this is on your screen, but the gull has caught something in its mouth as well. Some more new things that have been put into the D6 over the D5. We've put in a lot more custom group AF variations. Now, we introduced the D4 back in 2012, and we put in a new feature called Group Area AF, which photographers found to work very, very well. It just designates a small group which you can move around the frame of 5 focus points, but the camera will concentrate on those to make sure that when the subject is within those focus points, it stays tracked on the subject, no matter how fast it is. Now, we've been very fortunate at Nikon to be working with a very, very talented photographer called Clive Mason. Now, Clive Mason was using another brand a couple of years ago, but I was really pleased that he moved over to Nikon and went for the D5. Now, Clive Mason was chosen by Nikon Corporation in Japan to be one of the main brochure photographers. Well, there's two, one of the 2 brochure photographers for the D6. And Clive has taken a lot of images in conjunction with Nikon to show you the new features of the camera and just how well they work. So as I said, we had Group Area AF, which was an array of 5 different focus points. But in the D6, you've got 17 different customizable options for that. So depending on where your subject is and the format of your subject, where it is in the frame and so on, you can select the array that you want to ensure that your subject isn't lost. Now, if we look at the camera's menu here, we can see how we apply this. So I've got a screen grab from the camera here. We go into the camera's custom setting menu. Those of you that are familiar with Nikon will know exactly where to find this. We go into the autofocus options, and now we've got option A10, which is custom groupings C1 or C2. Now, within here, you can save 2 different predetermined areas. You know, you can see the different options here: 7x3, 11x3, 15x3, and so on. 15x1 if you've got a very narrow horizontal plane that you want to keep the subject focus within. And you can save 2 different custom groups, so group area C1 or group area C2. And you'll see in this sample here, Clive has chosen to use a 15x3 to ensure that the table tennis player's eyes are sharp there, and the camera isn't distracted by the ball or anything else in the frame, such as the net and so on. So a really good sample to show how that works there. Another new feature we've put into the D5 is we've put in 2 different options for single area AF. Now, depending on the kind of sport or the kind of subject, could be wildlife. If you want to focus on someone's eye, for instance, you might just want to put the camera in a single point AF, which means that only one AF point is active at any one time. Traditionally, with our DSLRs, the sensors for that single point were just a specific size. But with the D6, you can have a normal single point, or you can have a wide point. And if we look at the sample, again taken by Clive Mason on the right there, you'll see that Clive has selected the wide area AF to ensure that this sailor's face is sharp at all times. Had it been in just a normal single point, if she'd slightly moved away from the focus area that was chosen, her face might not have been sharp, and the camera might have picked up on something else in the background that you didn't want. So having that wide option just gives you that little bit of extra coverage, again, whether it's, you know, football or sports or wildlife, just to ensure that the camera nails focus on the desired point. Another new feature we've put into the D6 is a preset starting point for auto area AF. Now, all of our cameras, be it the D3000 series, the Z cameras, you know, any of our DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, all have auto area AF, which works really, really well. I've had a lot of feedback from photographers on just how accurate it is, and the camera just seems to know what you want to focus on. The thing is that you're not in control. You're putting control in the hands of the camera to decide what it thinks you should best focus on. But with the D6 now, you can have you can choose a starting point for the auto area AF, which is new to any of our DSLRs, which means that if you've got a subject that's going to suddenly enter the frame, be it wildlife again, or sport, or let's say it's a car coming over the top of a hill, you can predetermine the point at which the camera will start the auto area AF. And then when the camera stays, when the subject enters the frame, the camera will very, very accurate stay locked onto that subject. Just going to go to the next slide. Another feature that's new, or we've revamped on the D6 over previous generation cameras, is the ability to AF fine tune. Now, some people do fine tune their lenses, some photographers don't. When you're working sort of the top level and you want to ensure that your lenses are absolutely spot on in terms of front and back focus, then fine tuning your lenses is a really good thing to do. Traditionally with our cameras, you couldn't fine tune for both ends of a zoom. So if you had a 70 to 200, for instance, and it was very marginally back focusing at one end and front focusing at the other, you would have to take an average value in order to fine tune that. But with the D6 now, you can fine tune at one end and you can fine tune at the other end, and the camera will automatically adjust the focus depending on the extent of the zoom that you've got applied. Now, we said the camera, we talked about the camera's focusing. It really is second to none. It's absolutely fantastic, but it's also packs a punch when it comes to speed as well. So the D6 will actually shoot at 14 frames a second. 14 frames a second if you're shooting in viewfinder photography, but you've got a lot of other options as well. So 14 frames a second with full autofocus and full auto exposure. That's actually 2 frames a second faster than the D5 was. And I was speaking to another photographer who I'll talk about in a little while this morning, actually, and he said that really does make a difference. And I'll show you an example towards the end of this presentation as to where that 14 frames a second actually can be advantageous over even 12 frames a second. You've also got other options as well to shoot quiet continuous. So you can shoot in 5 frames a second in a quiet mode. Let's just put that on. I'm not going to be able to put it on. Yeah, so it's a little bit quieter, but up to 5 frames a second in that mode. Or you can have completely silent shooting, so no sound whatsoever. So if you're in an environment where let's say it's a wedding or a news environment or something like that, or wildlife again, where you don't want to disturb anyone or disturb your subject, you can shoot at up to 10.5 frames a second and retain complete full resolution, be it a JPEG or a RAW at 10.5 frames a second. Now there's also the option to shoot at up to 30 frames a second in 8 million pixel format, or even up to 60 frames a second in about a 2 million pixel format. So I'm just going to go back to the slideshow. Now this slide here shows you the mirror and shutter assembly, which is obviously crucial for the DSLR. It's been improved with the D6 over the D5, and as we said, 14 frames a second. Now it's a shame that I'm not going to be able to show you what it's like through the viewfinder, but have my word for it, the blackout time is very, very minimal. So even if you're shooting at 14 frames a second, you can very, very clearly see your subject and frame up and make sure that the focus is perfectly accurate, even if the subject is moving. This is just talking about the silent photography, 20.8 million pixel resolution, which I didn't say, sorry, crucial to the camera, 20.8 million pixel. Just to sort of tell you why that resolution. Well, the D6 is primarily aimed at news and sports photographers and anyone that wants to capture action and make sure that the camera does not miss a beat. Now, for most of those photographers, they need speed. They need the images to be sent to their chosen destination within seconds. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that and the transfer options in a little while. Now, the likes of the D850 and the Z7 have 45 million pixels, but if you've got that kind of resolution, the transfer time just isn't going to be quite that quick, and you're not going to get as many images on your card. So we have determined that around 20 million pixel is the ideal balance between quality and speed. So for news photographers and sports photographers, it's the exact ideal resolution, but it does reproduce fantastically well as well, and I'll show you some samples of that in a little while. Now, going back to that high-speed frame capture, as you know, there hasn't been any Premier League football over the last few months since the D6 has been around. So we've got the next best thing to show you a sample of, which is my 4-year-old daughter in the garden. Now, this is the camera taking 60 frames a second. It's only a 2 million pixel resolution, but you can see it's good enough to stand up. So where you want to capture real hidden action, I know that's not going to be Premier League speed. That's my wife throwing the ball to my daughter. It's not Mo Salah taking a strike, but it gives you an example of how 60 frames a second could be useful at certain situations. And if we look at the frame capture, you'll see the moment there at which she's saved the goal, if you like. Now, talking about the workflow and sending images, as I said, this camera is really the ultimate tool for professional photographers. When you want the best there is, you want the best accuracy, you want the best reliability, the best speed, and so on. In terms of getting images to your picture desk, you'll probably know that these days you can see a photograph of a goal being scored, for instance, a few seconds after it's happened. Now, how does that happen? Well, that happens with wireless technology. Nikon flagship cameras going back to the D2 have had wireless transmitters. Now on the D5 and the D6, it's the WT6. And what that enables you to do is it enables you to send your images to anywhere in the world within a matter of seconds. So as you're taking your image, you've basically got the WT6 sitting on the side of the camera. It's sending the pictures via Wi-Fi to your phone, and then you're using your phone signal in the background to send them to your picture desk, whether it's a newspaper or an agency, news agency, or anything like that, and they can see those images coming in straight away. Now, we believe that the WT6 is the most reliable and quickest system there is on the market. You can actually send your images to your phone or your MiFi unit or whatever from up to 200 meters away. And it's the fastest FTP upload there is. So if you want the ultimate in speed in terms of getting your images anywhere, there isn't a camera better than the D6. But you can also do it via wired LAN as well. So you'll see there on the side of the camera, you've got an Ethernet port. It's always been very quick in our cameras, but it's actually 15% quicker in the D6 than it was on the D5. We've also enhanced the way in which you can send your images as well, put in a lot more custom features as well that make it easier for professionals to get their images to anywhere in the world. Now, another thing I haven't told you yet is that the D6, again, an improvement over the D5, has got a touchscreen menu. Very easy to access any of the features you want. And if you're playing back your images, very, very quick and easy. Those of you that have a recent Nikon DSLR or mirrorless camera, you'll probably already be used to the touchscreen facility. It's very good. I mean, you wouldn't want to go back to a camera that doesn't have touchscreen once you've got it. But we've put in some new kind of swanky features that make it a lot easier for professionals to deal with their images. So for instance, if you want to send an image and you want to send it to the top of the queue, so that it's the next one sent to your picture desk, you literally just flick up on the screen and that image is prioritized to be the next one that lands in your picture desk. So speeding it up. Again, speaking to photographers over the past couple of weeks that work in newspapers and picture agencies and so on, they say that's a very, very welcome improvement over the D5 because it just enables you to quickly send that image out when you want to get it to the picture desk first. Because these days it's not just about who takes the best picture in news and sport, it's often about who gets the picture back to their picture desk the quickest. That will be the one that's published first. So the D6 has streamlined that workflow for you to ensure that you get those images there very, very quickly indeed. We've also put in built-in Wi-Fi to the camera. So as well as having the option for the WT6, if you want to FTP your images anywhere in the world, you can send them to a nearby PC or a smart device via the built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So many of you that are using relatively new Nikons now will be familiar with Nikon SnapBridge. It's a very good device. It's a free download from Nikon. It's available for iOS or for Android phones, and it will enable you to send your images either at the touch of a button or you can choose images to send and they can be on your phone within a matter of seconds. So if you want to get them out via social media or you want to send them to someone via email, you can do that really quickly. You don't have to mess around with wires. You don't have to take your memory card out or anything like that. Also, because the D6 has got built-in Wi-Fi, you can connect it directly to any PC. So, or as I said, smart device. So you can connect it to a PC, whether that's via an existing infrastructure. So if you've got a router in your home network, or if just a standalone laptop. And again, speaking to photographers over the last couple of weeks, some have said, that's great. So does that mean that when I'm at a football match, I don't have to take the memory card out of my camera and put it connected to a card reader and so on to download my images? Well, that's absolutely right. As you're taking the image, it can be automatically being sent to your PC so that the images will just appear on the PC within a matter of seconds. Another new feature we put into the D6 is GPS. Now, I think this is a very welcome feature for a lot of photographers. It's becoming increasingly important these days for a lot of photographers who want to geotag their image. And that means assigning to the metadata exactly where you were in the world at the time you took that image. So it applies the location data of the altitude, the longitude, the latitude, and the altitude. So you can review your images if you've come back from a safari or from a trek or something like that, or if it's for evidential purposes, for instance, if you're using the camera in a crime scene, that kind of thing. So you can precisely pinpoint where that image was taken at the time, any one time. And this camera will just coordinate all to a satellite signal, and then it will be set up to GPS every single image that you take. Another good thing about having the GPS facility is that it applies the universal time clock as well. So what that means is that your camera will always be on exactly the right time. Now, this is very significant for photographers that work for newspapers or picture agencies, again, because it means that all the cameras, all the D6s will be absolutely coordinated in terms of their timing. So when a picture agency or a newspaper, they're seeing these images that are coming in through FTP from let's say a football match, they've got 4 different photographers working at the football match. Traditionally, if they were being organized by chronological order, they might be all over the place because the photographers just haven't coordinated the time clock on their cameras. But with the built-in GPS, there's no need to do that. So those images will all be in exact chronological order, and that's down to a 100th of a second. Now, I said at the beginning that the Nikon cameras are rugged. They don't let you down at all, and they are very, very well weather sealed. Now, you'll see on the slideshow here that these parts, the yellow bits here, represent all the rubberized weather sealing components of the D6. It lives up to previous generation Nikon SLRs and DSLRs. It is the best you can get in terms of weather sealing. There's a photographer I know called Facundo who works for a European press agency, London-based photographer, very, very lovely guy. And I was talking to him about the weather sealing on the D5. Now, he recounted he was shooting at the World Cup final in Moscow in 2018. Now, some of you may remember that. It was largely a fine day until the trophy presentation, and the players were all on the pitch at the end and the heavens opened. Now, I was watching it live at the time, and I remember seeing a lot of photographers that I knew, and I saw that they didn't have rain covers, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, that's not good. But Facundo told me that the rain was so heavy that he couldn't actually see through the viewfinder, but his camera, his D5, kept on going. And even though he couldn't see to frame up the subject, the camera was still taking remarkably good pictures, which couldn't be said of some of the other brand cameras that were there on the day. Now, this is Facundo's picture of the trophy presentation, just showing that what he was saying was absolutely true. So moving on. Sorry, I've just got to switch. There we go. So looking at the ergonomics of the camera, I mean, it's a Nikon. We think about the ergonomics of the camera. We think about the photographer, how they hold the camera, because at the end of the day, the camera becomes an extension of you, doesn't it? And it's got to feel right. It's got to feel right in your hands, whether you're using it in portrait or vertical shooting. It's got to feel nice. So just like any previous generation Nikon flagship DSLR, it's very nicely rubberized. It's got a nice thin grip here, which makes you feel like you've really got a good hold of the camera. Your fingers really sit in nicely there. As we said, it's nicely rubberized. And also, I don't know if the light will allow me to show, but if we were in dim light, I could show you. We've got a very nice lit. You can't see it, it's too bright in here. but the LCD lights up nice and better than the D5, I'd say. It lights up in blue as opposed to that kind of greeny that the previous generation cameras had. And anything that lights up blue is just nice, right? So it feels great. And we've continued the same traditional button layout that you'd be used to from the D3, D4. In fact, it goes back to kind of the F4. And we know what photographers want in terms of the configuration of the camera. So to a photographer that's coming from any other previous Nikon SLR or DSLR, you'll immediately be very familiar with all the controls on the camera and just how good it feels and just how your muscle memory will enable you to know exactly where every button is. Battery life is just fantastic. For those of you that are using a D4 or a D5, you'll be thrilled to know that it's the same battery format. It's the ENEL 18. It comes with a newer type battery, the 18C, which gives you a longer life. It actually gives you, well, up to 3,580 shots in single, but a phenomenal 8,760 shots in continuous. So if you're shooting wildlife, you're shooting sport, I don't think you'd ever need to take that many pictures in a day. I don't think you'd be able to take that many pictures in a day. The battery just keeps on going and going. Now that's 25% more battery power than any other brand of flagship brand camera on the market, which is just fantastic. And it's actually 8 times longer battery life than you'll get on mirrorless competitors' cameras as well. So it really is the ultimate where you want your camera to just keep going and going. Another new feature we've put into the D6 is a Kensington lock support. Now, I don't have fingernails, but there you go. So you can see that there. There, for the first time, a DSLR has got the option to add a Kensington lock. It's a sad state of affairs, but we're hearing increasingly more and more about photographers having their equipment stolen, even from what should be secure areas like football stadiums and so on. Now, lots of these cameras will be in photographers' hands, but many of them will be used as remote cameras as well. So they'll be behind goals, they'll be up in the stands somewhere, places like that. Well, with the Kensington lock support, you can securely tie it to a railing or something like that to ensure that it doesn't get taken away. As I said at the beginning, the camera is very, very customizable as well. You've actually got 14 customizable controls, which give you, how many, 46 different functions that you can apply to lots of the different buttons of the camera. So if you want to set the camera up for a specific type of use, then you can do that. I'll just take you through the next slide, which again is looking at the camera menu. If we look into the menu here, we go into the custom setting menu again, and we choose the controls option. You'll see within here that you've got the custom controls, option F3, and we'll take you through the different buttons. You get a visual representation of all the buttons on the camera, and each one of those you can apply a whole host of different controls, whether it's to govern the exposure, things like that, right down to the button on the lens. Now, if you've got one of the big lenses like a telephoto, anything from a 70 to 200 up, then you can actually assign that to do a lot of different things. Now, what we're doing here is we're assigning that lens button to change at the press of a button to change the shutter speed. So with just that press of that one button on the lens, I can quickly change the shutter speed from, say, a 1/1500th of a second to a 30th of a second. And I'll give you an example of when you might want to do that. Let's say you're a sports photographer and you're in a stadium and you're at the end of the track, of the oval track, and you've got a runner running towards you, or let's say they're doing the 1,500 meters, they're running towards you, and you're going to want to frame up and you're going to want to have them at a 1/1500th of a second to ensure that they're perfectly sharp. But as they come around the bend and they run across the frame, you might want to drop down to a 30th of a second so that you get a pan blur, a nice effect. So you get that blur behind them, but you keep them relatively sharp in the frame whilst retaining a bit of movement in their arms and legs. Now, with that option I just showed you in the menu, you can drop from a 1/1600th of a second to a 30th of a second. You can choose that, you can change the ISO accordingly as well, and you do that just with a touch of a button. And you can do that on any of our sort of big pro lenses. If we look at the 70 to 200 here, you'll see the 70 to 200 has actually got 4 custom control buttons. So any one of those, you can assign a number of different features to it, changing exposure, locking exposure, things like that. So just at the press of a button, you can change the whole facets of the camera without having to go into the menu, without even taking your eye away from the action. So a really nice feature to be able to do that. These are all the features that you can apply. So as I said, 46 different features, some really useful things, but you can apply those to all the different buttons on your camera. So you know, customizing the camera, you can make it the camera that you want it to be. Well, it will be the camera you want it to be, I can guarantee you that, but you can customize it for your own individual needs. Now, in terms of the format of the card, any photographers using Nikon Z, Nikon D850, Nikon D4, D4S, D5 will be pleased to know that we haven't changed the format. It still takes the XQD. So looking at the back of the camera, you've got a dual card slot there. So it will take 2 cards simultaneously. I'll just pop that back so you can have a good look and big screen there. 2 cards, and you can customize those in a lot of different ways. But also, the fantastic news is it's also compatible with the new CF Express Type B cards. Now, these cards are just incredibly fast. They'll actually write up to 1700 megabits per second, which is more really than you'll ever need. But it's exactly the same form factor as the XQD. So you don't have to upgrade any of your cards. But in the future, if you want to go for those faster cards, then you can do so by getting the CF Express Type B format. And as I said, they are incredibly fast, but also they're incredibly reliable as well. You know, looking back to CF type, the CF technology, those of you that are using cameras with CF cards, that's 25-year-old technology. And they can be a little prone to corruption, as can SD sometimes, but the XQD and the CF Express Type B are incredibly reliable, incredibly stable. This slide here will just show you some of the ways in which you can configure the card slots. You can have, for the first time, JPEG plus JPEG, which is as a result of photographer feedback. In the D5, you could have RAW in one and JPEG in the other, but now you can have large JPEG in one and small JPEG in the other, which means that if you're a photographer shooting for a client, you want to be able to show them an image quickly or download it quickly, you can take out the card, or you can send the small JPEG via SnapBridge or via direct Wi-Fi to your laptop or smart device. But you can retain the large JPEG in the other card slot, and that will be the one that you edit ultimately. So a nice new addition to the D6. Image quality, as I said at the beginning, is one of the most important things, and the D6 really doesn't let you down. It's got a standard ISO rating, anything from 100 up to 102,400, but you've got 5 stops above that. So it will give you an equivalent at the top end of 3.2 million ISO. Now, that in conjunction with the camera's new X-Speed 6, which is Nikon's latest edition of processing engine, also can be found in our Z cameras. It gives you very, very good ISO reproduction, even at the very high ISOs. Now, I mentioned Clive Mason earlier in the talk. Clive Mason has taken this image to prove that he's not just a very talented sports photographer, he's actually amazing at anything he throws his hands at. And this was a picture of the flower moon, which was the spring moon a few weeks ago, the last supermoon of 2020. And Clive has taken this shot on the D6 with a 600mm lens. And Clive told me afterwards that he forgot to bring a tripod. So to think that he had to push the ISO, obviously had he had a tripod, he could have dropped down to, you know, maybe a 1/25 or something like that. But instead of that, he pushed the ISO up to 6,400 in this shot. And you can see that the quality is retained, the color is retained. And that is carried out through the whole range on the D6. And from the feedback we've got and independent tests that have been carried out, I would say that, and the feedback says that the ISO range on the D6 is probably around about 2 stops better than the D5. Now, I thought it was impossible to get any better than the D5, but it really has with the D6. So where you need to push the camera for low light, you simply can't do any better than this camera. We've also improved the camera in terms of its white balance as well. Now, I took the camera out in anger for the first time last weekend. I was socially distancing, but we went out with my children and took some pictures of my children in various lighting situations, some of which were under trees, some were in sunlight, some of which were backlit. But in those images, the first thing that stood out to me was just how good the white balance was on the camera. And this, again, is feedback we're getting from some of the high-end photographers that are using the D6 already, is just how good it is at reproducing skin tones. It just out of the box, it's just fantastic. You've got 3 different auto white balance. You can have retain overall atmosphere. You can reduce the warm colors if you want to just give you that slightly cooler look, or you can retain the warmth if you want, if let's say you're shooting people's skin tones in the winter and you just want to make it look a little bit warmer. But out of the camera, out of the box, the camera's white balance and colors are just so very, very good indeed. Now, another photographer who we've been working with over the last couple of weeks, again, a very talented sports photographer who works for the Daily Mail, called Andy Hooper. Andy has won numerous photographer awards in his time, and he's taken a series of images on the D6 over the last couple of weeks. Some of you may have seen these. They appeared in the Mail online last Saturday, and really of the time, it was just documenting athletes and their training in their gardens and their local environments, because obviously right now with the pandemic, they don't have access to their normal training facilities. And I think these images just demonstrate really nicely just how good the color and the quality is out of the D6. You can see the skin tones are held really nicely. Andy told me actually this morning that this shot of the gymnast there doing the somersault on the balance beam there was taken at 14 frames a second, and he really believes had it been at 12 frames a second as we had on the D5, he might not have quite nailed that desired effect there, getting that sort of symmetry or juxtaposition, if you like, between her legs and the background. So having that couple of extra frames a second just enables you to nail the subject. Another couple of samples, again, 14 frames a second on the D6. You'll see just how it's nailed the shot at the critical time. Again, you can see how nicely the camera has, dealt with the color balance and so on. Really, really lovely shot. And this one as well, really nice, beautiful colors. Again, taken on the D6, just demonstrating just how good it is and how it nails everything you want it to nail. We've also put in new features for editing as well. So again, with a lot of our DSLR, and actually with all of our DSLR and all of our Z range as well, right down to the very entry-level cameras, you can edit your images, but you can edit them in camera, and it does it very well. So if you want to quickly adjust an image before you show someone, or before you send it to a client, or send it anywhere in the world, you can very quickly edit the images on the back of the camera. We put in some new features into the D6 as well, like mid-range sharpening as well, and clarity as well, just to give you a little bit of extra control over the amount that you can edit. Now, these are some of the images I took of my children last week. I'm just going to show you an example of that. Going through the images, again, you can do this all with touchscreen. You can double tap on the image to select it. I've chosen this image here. We go to the retouch menu, and we go to raw processing. Now this, oh, sorry, I'm going to trim here. Sorry, my apologies. So what you can do for the first time on the D6, for the first in any of our cameras, is that you can actually make a landscape image into a portrait. So you can choose your desired aspect ratio. Here I'm going for 3:4, which is traditional. You can also reframe your image very easily, and you can do that all with your fingers. You can pinch in to change the framing and so on. You select your desired framing, hit OK on that, and then it saves it as a new image. So a lot more framing options than you had. A lot more editing options than you had previously. You've also got 20 inbuilt preset raw styles as well. So if you want a kind of melancholic look or carbon look, lots of different monochrome looks as well that you can add very easily. So it means you don't have to go to software afterwards to give your images a completely sort of different look and feel. So that's kind of it about the camera features. You get everything you need really to start you off with the camera in the box, or the cables and so on. What I'll do is I'll give you just a quick tour so you can see. So if we can go back to full screen on the camera, you can see some of the ergonomics and just how good it looks, how nice it looks in the hand. These are some of the ports on the camera, and everything has really, I would say, been improved in many ways over even the D5. So we've got USB-C. USB-C is great. It's very, very stable. It doesn't come out at all. I think previously with USB 1 and USB 3, they had a tendency to kind of waggle and so on. But USB 3 is really stable, fits into the camera very solidly. We've also changed the HDMI port as well. So if you're outputting to video, if you're shooting videos, and I didn't even mention the video capabilities of the camera, but of course it will shoot at 4K, which is higher than anyone really needs for any kind of output that you can apply these days, or 1080 as well, high HD. But it's got a HDMI mini, which I think is the best of all of the HDMI sizes. It's just very, very stable, very robust. You also get in the box with the camera a little clamp as well. So when you put your HDMI to your external video recording device, you can clamp it in there, and it's very, very secure indeed. If you are shooting video, you've got a microphone input and an audio output as well, so you can hear what you're recording via headphones. And you've also got the Ethernet as well. So if you're kind of shooting professionally, you need to send those images anywhere in the world over the net, then you can do so. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but the Ethernet on this camera is 15% quicker even than it was on the D5. The button configuration really is generally as you would expect on the Nikon. You've got 3 different custom controls here on the left. So as we said, we can apply a lot of different things to those buttons. So you can really make it work exactly how you want it to. A nice touch screen on the back and a nice big 100% viewfinder, which means that you can really see the action as you're taking it. So hopefully that's given you some insight into the camera. I haven't been looking at the questions at all, but I did see there were a number of questions coming in. We'll go back to Paul.
Hi, Rob. That was the knowledge that you have on that camera is truly brilliant. So, and yeah, there's certainly a lot to it. And we've certainly got that across. So yeah, no, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, lots of people commenting. We've got an amazing discussion going on YouTube here as well. So lots of people commenting on YouTube with very big descriptions as well. So what I might need to do, rather than showing them up on the screen, I think we'll just sort of I'll collapse it down for you. In a conversation that we've been having on YouTube here, we've had, let's just find the top section here. So there's a question about the buffer capacity and essentially how this has changed between the D5 to the D6. Apparently reported to say that it's been reduced from the D5. I don't know if you can comment on that.
No, I will happily answer to the best of my knowledge. I mean, as far as I understand, you'll be able to buffer 200 JPEG images. Now, I don't believe I've seen the figure for RAW. It might be 200 as well. I would be happily individually get back to the person that's asked that question if I can get an accurate answer on that. Obviously, I don't want to make up any figures or give any false information, but I have seen the figure 200. Now, whether that applies to RAW or JPEG, I'm not 100% sure. All I can say, and I want to assure anyone, it will buffer more than you really need to. I mean, do you want to be taking more than 200 images at 14 frames a second? That's going to give you, what, 15 seconds of shooting? Do you want to do that? I don't know. But to reassure, the buffer is very, very good. I mean, I've given it a little try, but I haven't tested it to its maximum capacity. But I'm sure it won't let any single photographer down, no matter where they are, you know, even those at the very top of their game.
Because you mentioned before about obviously the new CF Express and the XQD and the rates that they transfer as well. I mean, essentially, as soon as you've stopped that 14 frames per second from happening, and you give the camera just a second or two to rest, then you're back to your buffer absolutely being completely empty anyway, aren't you? So
this is true. Yeah, I mean, it will absolutely, especially with the CF Express Type B, the camera will be saving images faster than you would ever want to shoot them.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. We've had a couple of questions regarding the tracking facilities on the D6 and how it relates to the tracking of eyes, either in animals or humans and things like that. How does that relate on the D6?
So it's similar technology, but it's slightly different. I mean, what you have to bear in mind is this is an SLR camera, so all of the facial recognition is being done effectively through a combination of the camera's focus system and its metering sensor. On a mirrorless camera, it's being done by the actual sensor as well. So on a mirrorless camera, there are effectively more pixels that can be determining what the subject is, the recognition, and so on. So this has face recognition and very, very good face recognition, even with the optical viewfinder shooting. However, it isn't, to my knowledge, carried across to animals. I mean, we recently added animal IAF to the Z6 and the Z7 via a firmware upgrade. So maybe that will come. I genuinely don't know. I'm not going to promise the viewers that will happen. I don't know if it's going to be hardware restricted or not. But the early feedback I've got from photographers using these is actually the face recognition within the auto area AF does work very well, and it does seem to nail the subject's eyes really nicely. So it's, in a way, it's not quite as comprehensive as that you'd expect on a mirrorless camera because it is employing a different technology, but it does work well.
No, that's brilliant. And essentially, we are dealing with different technology, aren't we? So, and as we saw from the from the shooting of that backlit goal before, is that it tracks. You know, whichever way it does it, it tracks and it keeps a hold of that subject and just keeps going.
Absolutely, yeah. Some of the comments I've had, I mean, photographers would echo, you know, what I've said is that they didn't really feel that you could get any better than the D5, but having this camera in their hands over really the last few days, I mean, I've literally been getting your show has come at a perfect time actually, because I've been getting feedback just this morning on the camera, and that is, wow, it is just phenomenally good and better even than the D5. You know, more reliable focusing, more accurate focusing than the D5, better focus tracking, and you add that to all the sort of the customizable features as well, and what you've got is actually a much better camera.
No, that's fantastic. Let's see if we can find. I think we there was a question about so Gwynfor off Facebook. So he has a D5 at the moment, and I think this is something that we mentioned, but just to go over it again, the battery on the D6 is absolutely phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not going to let you down. Yeah, it is a kind of a different kind of battery type to the D500. Of course, the D500 has the EN EL15 type battery. This is an EN EL18, which is a lot physically bigger and therefore can hold a much bigger charge. I would say, well, we've said 8,000 shots in continuous. Again, I was speaking to a photographer, Tony O'Brien, the same guy that did the goal shots actually, and he said it just keeps on going and going. So, you know, this camera is designed where you want the ultimate in performance. Now, the D500 is a perfectly adequate camera. You know, the D500 is great, and I'm sure you'd agree yourself, Paul. But you know, it takes stunning imagery. But this is designed with sort of cutting edge professionals in mind, and those who want the very best out of a camera. So you are going to get much better battery performance, the best battery performance of any DSLR out there. Simply that. No, so yes, it can't be beaten.
That's brilliant. So I can see comments coming in at the bottom of this queue now. So let me just, rather than starting at the top, let me work from the bottom a little bit as well. So, and I saw this before as well. Where was it? We had a question about the largest RAW file size.
Largest raw file size. Well, there are quite a lot of different permutations for how you set up the RAW. You can have a compressed RAW, you can have an uncompressed RAW, you can have a lossless compressed RAW, you can have 12-bit or 14-bit, and you can have any sort of combinations of those specific features. So, and then you can also have a small, medium, and large RAW as well, which is a new feature for the D6. So you can go down to, I might be getting the figures wrong, but it might be around about a 10 megabyte RAW, sorry, 10 megapixel RAW, 15 megapixel RAW, and then 20.8, something around about those. So you can have a RAW that's down to probably as little as 20 megabytes, but the biggest RAW, like a 14-bit uncompressed RAW, large size, is going to give you probably around 70, 80 meg. So it also varies slightly according to your subject matter as well. So a busy subject with a lot of information is going to give you, a bigger file size than if you took a picture of a black cat in a black room.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, that's brilliant. Let's pick up on. So yeah, comments coming in faster than I can get them up on the screen and read them. So just bear with me a second. Let's have a look here as well. So we had a question about the crop on the 4K video.
Yeah.
As far as the does it suffer the crop like the D5 and D500 during 4K video?
It does, marginal crop. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I couldn't answer why that is. Obviously on 1080 it's full frame, but you do get a small crop with the 4K as well. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And once again, just starting. Let's bring this one up here from Gareth Mon, who we've had in before on our show as well. Will the Nikon bring out an Astro dedicated mirrorless as the Canon have done?
I genuinely don't know. I don't know. Obviously, we did with the D810A, which proved to be successful amongst those that wanted that kind of different sensor. I genuinely don't know. As much as you might think that I've got this knowledge of products that are happening in the future, I really don't. I mean, we obviously know about products before they come out, but we really don't know to a huge extent what Nikon Corporation in Japan are working on. So I don't know, but I'd say watch this space. I mean, if there is a need for it out there, I know there are a lot of astrophotographers that use Nikon cameras, and that's largely down to the success of the D800 series and our sort of legendary optical quality and good wide angle lenses and so on. So maybe there is a need for it, but I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. So it would be foolish of me to hazard a guess at this stage. No, that's fine. And once again, just Dino again, just asking a question about us, the 1735. Any sort of other f-mount lenses coming for the D6? In terms of wide angle? Sorry, Paul. Was that wide angle lenses? I mean, I'm not aware of any at this stage. I mean, we've got the 1424, which has been around for a while, but very tried and tested. Still a current model. Photographers like that. That's a 2.8 lens. Really nice if you want to go ultra wide angle and really, really good quality. We've also got the 1635, which is a cheaper version. It's cheaper. It's still good quality, but it's not as expensive as the 1424, and that gives you phenomenal quality as well. And if you're looking to get a wide-angle lens on a slightly tighter budget, we've also got the 1835 as well, which is a really nice lens, and for the money, it packs a great punch. So there are some good wide-angle zoom offerings from Nikon, but I'm not aware of any new ones coming out anytime soon. No, that's absolutely brilliant. We've got some very specific sort of niggly sort of technical questions there, and I think some of them with these as well. If you go onto our website, there's a messages section on the bottom of our website. Just dump them in there. That'll come directly to me, and I can pass them over to Rob and get these questions back to you as well. Because I mean, anything we haven't had time to answer today, I'm happy to get back as far as I can answer. If there are questions I can't answer, then I won't be able to. But where I've got the information, I'll be happy to relay that to any of the people watching. Yeah, that's brilliant. It's been wonderful having you, Rob, and thank you ever so much for everyone commenting in the comments there as well. It's lovely to see that you're all watching live, and sorry that we couldn't get them
all onto the screen. It's happening quite quick on this on the feed on the side. So like I said, any sort of specific questions that you have, just dump them into our message board on our website, which is cambrianphoto.co.uk, and I'll get them over to Rob and get them answered for you. Not a problem. Rob, it's absolutely amazing to see you. Thank you for taking us through the D6 with all the lovely sort of explanations that you've given with it as well. So I'll drop you back down into the just into the green room, and I'll have a quick chat after the live. But thanks for coming, Rob.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to be part of your show, and appreciate all the viewers logging in to see it.
That's brilliant. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
All right. Cheers then.
Absolutely amazing talk from Rob there from Nikon, and it's wonderful to see all the comments coming in live. If you're rewatching this video, you can still comment in there as well, and any questions we can get over to Rob to get them answered for you as well. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is going to be our last recorded section of the virtual show. So if you're watching this, you can go back and rewatch all of the other sort of videos that we've done for the virtual show live and rewatch them. And that's available through our website, through the Photo and Optics Show link, and you can rewatch on there. Coming up later on today, we do have a live exclusive that's going to be with Clive Booth at 7 p.m. Live exclusive, so it won't be available for rewatch. So you do need to make sure that you're tuning in live to watch this lovely talk that that Clive is going to do for us. So as far as the virtual show is concerned, for recording purposes, this is the end for the re-records. But I'm hoping to see all of you for the Clive Booth live event later on today. Until then, goodbye for now.